One day, strata businesses will manage an owner's corporation for free. They'll offer to do it for free or for very low cost because the opportunity to sell services and cater to the needs of all of the people in these communities is probably 10x what the traditional model of charging for service is.
This is the Operational Clarity podcast, where we sit down with experienced leaders from the HOA, strata, and body corporate management industries from around the world to unpack what it really takes to build and run great operations. My name is Robert Hangu, and today we have Chris Miller joining us from Canberra, Australia. Chris spent approximately 12 years working inside established strata businesses before co-founding Vantage Strata in 2015. Over the next 8 years as CEO, he scaled the company from startup to a market-leading strata management business. They oversee more than 200 buildings and 14,000 units across Canberra and surrounding markets. Chris, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Robert. Pleasure to be here.
Chris, unlike other executives who stay focused purely on operations, you took leadership roles with Strata Community Association and the Strata Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Task Force. Mind sharing a bit on your motivations on going beyond just being an operator and trying to shape the broader landscape?
Yeah, happy to. Can I just correct you on some of those stats? So I think I need to update my bio. We're about 250 buildings with 18,000 units that we look after, and I'm joining you not from Canberra but from gloomy Melbourne. My business is mostly in Canberra, but I've made the crazy move, and we may get into it, but I've moved my life to Melbourne just to add a bit of complexity to my life. I thought that's what was missing. So, but we may get onto that. My motivation for being involved with, there's probably two different answers, to be fair. SCA in the ACT, I'm the president of Strata Community Association, ACT, and I'm involved, nationally, and have been for some time. I think I've probably been the president for more than 10 years, just in 3 sort of different stints over my career. And my motivation to begin with was, to be perfectly blunt, it was about profile building. I was a younger man at the time, and I was probably pretty young even to have the balls to try to put my hand up to be president, but I did, and I won the election on that occasion when it was contested. And yeah, really my motivation was to try to grow into my ego, to be honest. It's probably a bit of a glib answer, but it's the truth. As the years have gone on and my career's developed, and this has been a really rewarding industry for me, my motivation has shifted a lot over time. I now don't get any value, frankly, personally, from a profile point of view, or there's no real, benefit to me personally for being the president currently. But man, there's just so much work to do in shaping the legislative environment, shaping the policy landscape, and I just don't want that to be left unattended, basically. And that's not to diminish my industry colleagues. I've got a lot of really great, talented contemporaries, certainly in the ACT, that would be capable of doing the job that I was doing. My predecessor, the past president before I took over, Shelley Mulheron, who's one of the partners at TG Law, she was doing a great job, but she just had enough of it. So the time was up for someone else to take the burden on, and it now is much more a labour of love, and something that I think is just sort of critical for the industry, and someone has to do it. So it's a bit of an arc there in terms of motivation. The EV charging group, which has sort of been disbanded now as well, that was really more just because that was such an interesting technical space. And frankly, I thought if I was in the forefront of that, I think I was the co-chair or vice chair or something. I can't actually remember what my role was. You probably know better than me because you've clearly read my profile recently. That was to immerse myself in it. I want to know everything I can and be on the cutting edge or the leading edge or bleeding edge of some of these new, technical hurdles that are faced by owners, corporations, and opportunities. So anything in EV charging or battery storage or, things of that nature, I think, there's a real advantage in knowing the most about that and being able to shape policy, of course. But I think most people I speak to are playing catch up when it comes to that stuff, the technology on that leading edge.
Yeah, totally agreed. You're mentioning having wanted to shape policy and the legislative part of the strata management industry. How would you say that these parts influence the day-to-day operations? Like, how does policy or a policy change influence the way you do business day to day?
Extensively, broadly and deeply and in every aspect of what we do, I think, left unattended, left to their own devices, legislators will pass laws and make policies that sound great on paper, and they, scratch the itch of, consumer lobby groups, and they're all with best intention will come up with all sorts of things that might place huge burden on business. The cost of doing business in the industry. They may well be beneficial for the consumer, and the controversial view that, frankly, as business owners, we need to weigh up, what is best for the consumer and what's best for business. And we need to really have a voice in shaping the direction, because, it's all well and good to create, checks and balances and obligations. But if those things are just net added costs to our service delivery without us having played a role in influencing and shaping that, then we end up, there's, I don't know, in economic theory, there's a thing called an externality. That's an externality cost, and it just lumps itself with the service providers if we're not sort of on top of it. That's the cynical view. The positive view is, the more positive view is that there are real reforms that need to take place, not for self-serving, dollars and cents business reasons, just to be able to do our jobs properly for the industry, not just the industry, but the strata management of the strata sector, people living and owning in strata. There's real reforms that are necessary for that to be functional. And we've got the best insight into that. So I think it makes sense that we're, at the very least, at the table with consumer lobby groups such as the OCN and others.
I agree. I agree. Let's shift gears a little bit, and looking at your background and your work that you did, especially the experience at Ray White Strata, Civium Strata, what led you to start your own business, Vantage Strata? And what part of your initial career work has helped you start this business?
Yeah. So to be honest, what led me to start my own business, I was actually approached by my business partners, or some of them are now my former business partners. We've over the years bought them out, but I was essentially approached and asked whether I'd go and start this thing with these other guys. To be honest with you, I had sort of had enough of Strata. I was doing Strata for several years. I was Ray White at the time. It started out as a company called Canberra Units Plan Services, which anyone in Canberra who hears that would know what I'm talking about. That was one of the, if not the largest in Canberra. That was purchased by the guy that owned Ray White, and it became Ray White Strata and eventually evolved into Civium. I was doing Strata in one form or another under one of those, under each of those businesses, and I'd had enough. Strata management or HOA management, or whatever you want to call it, wherever you are in the world, is a really difficult job, and it requires a huge amount of, it's not just because it's busy and there's a lot of work to do, but it is an emotionally taxing gig. It's frequently the lens that you operate through is negative. People often don't understand your job properly, so you're held to account on things that are just totally outside of your control or area of responsibility, but no one gives a crap about that. People just, lay the boot into you. So I'm not doing a good job promoting the industry, but the truth is it's really difficult. And I reached a point in my career where I'd just had enough, and I took a parallel gig with the same company doing commercial real estate, just in sales and leasing. And let me tell you, that was like, moving from Siberia to Hawaii. It was like, it was incredible.
What a
Just
comparison.
lunch, yeah, long lunches and nice, great times, and just everything's positive. You're doing deals. It's this rush of things. Every interaction, most interactions are positive interactions. So it was night and day, and I was loving that. But I always knew that whilst that was a good time, there is so much value and untapped value, in my opinion, still untapped value, unrealized value in strata management for reasons that, I'm happy to get into, but I don't know if we'll have time. But just the actual structure of how this industry functions and how the sector functions, I think, you know, there's so much unrealized potential in terms of the captive audience you've got, your ability to satisfy their needs, your ability to sort of aggregate demand and match it conveniently. It was an area that I always thought the future is in strata. And when we started Vantage Strata, and we've not realized this dream yet, still a work in progress, but when we started Vantage, I used to say, I honestly think one day strata businesses will manage an owner's corporation for free. They'll offer to do it for free or for very low cost, because the opportunity to sell services and cater to the needs of all of the people in these communities, the value opportunity is probably 10x what the traditional model of charging for service is. Now that was young man's, delusion perhaps. But that's what 50% of the population of this country will live in a strata titled unit at some point, and they all live in these concentrated communities. And a strata manager is this gatekeeper to have this audience and we know things about them. We know they 350 units, all has the same Mitsubishi air conditioner that has a serviceable life of 10 years, and it's 8 years old. Is there an opportunity there for me to match a solution with a need and do it in a convenient way and get good buying power and make something in between? That was really what attracted me to that sector. I just think all that additional ancillary opportunity that's not been touched. And what happened is 10 years or 12 years of growing Vantage Strata, it's been an incredible success, but you just got so busy in the business of strata management that we haven't really touched the sides on a lot of that stuff. But yeah, that is not available in any other aspect of real estate. Maybe to a lesser degree, residential property management. Don't know what they call it in other markets, but rental management. Maybe that's got a similar opportunity, but it's still a drop in the ocean compared to the opportunity.
So you're saying that instead of charging fees from the homeowners and from the body corporation, instead of that, you offer to manage them for free. So let's say basic service is all for free, but then you could find all these small opportunities to match them to the right vendors. To, let's say, you've mentioned the air conditioner, that they all have the same air conditioner. So you could match them with a service provider who focuses only on that air conditioner. You, as a strata manager, would get paid from interactions that you facilitate. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and to be very clear, that is a theory that has not been tested or executed on. But I make the point that that just because it hasn't been tapped doesn't mean that the oil is not sitting under the Jed Clampett's backyard to be properly mined. So that was a theory. Never really executed on that. That's what attracted me to this space. I still look off onto the horizon, and I still think that. But yeah, you've effectively nailed what I think. And maybe it's not. It's done for free. Maybe that's super profits, or I'm a lefty. My business partners accuse me of being a socialist, because I'm because I'm on the left side of things. They're probably not wrong, but I think about the opportunity to unlock that value, and I think, well, how much of that could I give back? What could my competitive advantage be if my service delivery cost was half the price of my competitors and I was still making just as much profit, and I was offering really awesome user experience for my clients? They were getting something they don't get anywhere else, and they were getting those services cheaper and more conveniently because I was leveraging the collective buying power of these communities. So yeah, you've nailed it. One air conditioner of a particular kind in one building. But you can pull on that thread even more, Every building that we manage, apartment building, most of them have, if not all of them, they have all carpets in their hallways. I don't know whether you can, aggregate the interest for people 10 years into a building's life cycle to say, well, we're going to be replacing the carpet in the hallway. Would you like to also consider getting the carpet in your home replaced? Can we get collective buying power there? Can I group buildings together and say, well, let's get a price from a carpet wholesaler on 200,000 square meters of carpet because we're doing, 150 buildings all at once, and they're getting massive bulk shipping container order type prices rather than an individual building price. And all of that is there. All that opportunity is there. No one's ever unlocked it, and I'm not professing to have the answers to that, although we're doing a lot of work in that direction. But that is the opportunity that is there to unlock. And I don't think we've overlaid a level of service delivery sophistication in our industry that really matches the opportunity that could be unlocked for us as business owners. Taking my socialist cap off and being a capitalist for a minute, there is business opportunity there. But for the communities that we serve, I don't know any community that I serve, that I'm involved with, that doesn't think it would be good to get 25% off having their air conditioner serviced because you were leveraging the collective buying power, even if that meant we were making something in the middle. Like, there's no one who finds that offensive in my experience so far.
Yeah, you definitely need to have both caps on, right? If you're a business owner, both the socialist and the capitalist cap. Very, very good analogy there. And
well, it helps in
this leads
strata
me.
management to have a bit of a socialist sprinkle,
Yeah, yeah. But totally, this is the part where you have this collective buying power. So probably the socialist cap is satisfying everybody in a way, like offering them cheap prices, and then you have the capitalist cap on, seeing these opportunities, monetizing on them as well. And I was curious to understand. So for the homeowners living in the stratas, it would make sense because the management itself would be for free, so they wouldn't pay for it. Hence, it would be attractive. And then furthermore, it would be even more attractive because if they need something to be repaired, so they pay on demand. Let's say if they need something repaired or a carpet change or whatever, and plus they get it cheaper because you have these deals. So everything is cheaper, like management plus repairs plus, I don't know, replacing different items. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're spot on. And there's a good, it's a good sort of opening to examine that or compare that with other models that people are sort of familiar with that nowadays. It feels like forever that you've had Uber Eats and these sort of services around. They haven't been around for all that long. I remember my first time ordering on Deliveroo. I was in Sydney at the time, and I was like,
Yeah.
holy crap, I can order whatever I want from any restaurant. It was like,
Yeah.
my head nearly blew off. That wasn't that long ago. If that
Mm-hmm.
was 7 or 8 years ago. But now it's like everyone's familiar with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the analogy people use, but it's not quite right, because what you've got in that model is you've got a service provider, a restaurant, for example, use the example of a restaurant, and you've got a customer and an intermediary who's going to do a deal in the middle. And somewhere in there, usually the business model is either the service provider will give up part of their sale, 20% or 30%. It's not uncommon. They have that margin taken out of it, and they pay that because they want access to that market that they don't otherwise have access to. But they're down. They might be up because there's a new market open to them. They've got to sacrifice part of their margin for that. And then you've got the customer either who gets it for free, but usually the customer pays something too. There's these delivery fees. And customers are okay with that. They tend to be happy to pay what I call a convenience tax. And the person in the middle is making something. But if you look at that, there's two sides of that equation that are being taxed for that. In comparison, though, what I'm talking about is, let's say you have 300 apartments, right? And this isn't on demand. I need something fixed. I've got a leaky tap. This is more or less things that are routine. Replacing carpet's a good one. That happens every 10 years. But every apartment has an air conditioner that needs to be serviced every year. Sure, the manufacturer's warranty requires it, but it's best practice. So in that instance, if you've got 300 units and they all have the same air conditioner, that all have the same service requirement, there's not this different hodgepodge unless people have replaced them over time. But for the sake of conversation, you can assume they're all the same. Now, in that case, if you've aggregated the demand and said, well, we're going to come out and service or arrange for this to be serviced, and we're going to get people to pre-commit, and we're going to offer it to you cheaper than you could get it if you just did it yourself. So there's no convenience tax on the customer. They're getting a better deal and it's more convenient. It's managed and organised for them. And then if you've got the service provider to say, well, instead of charging $250, we need you to do it for $150 and we're going to take some in the middle. All right, so they're losing something, but we'll say for 2 whole weeks, you can park your operation here at 7:30 in the morning and leave everything here, and you can do 10 a day, and we've scheduled it out and we've added this value by getting the demand and coordinating access and that. You can be here doing 10 a day. If you were out on your own, you've got to be driving all around town, you maybe could do half that amount. So even with a discount, you're better off. You've got access to a market you didn't have access to, and you're able to deliver more service to write more gross service fees in a day, even by giving a discount. So the comparison is, on the Uber Eats model, one person paying a convenience tax, another person, losing part of their margin, but the intermediary makes money. Whereas in this arrangement, it is better for the service provider, arguably. It's better for the customer, and there's still enough in the middle to make a margin. That to me is where there's, a really interesting model in strata management. But I feel like I've done myself a disservice by saying strata management will be free because, that's like maybe moderate that a bit. But I think you could offset some of the strata management fee or some people would argue you don't discount that at all and this is all super profits, but people love it because it's a great experience. All of those things, have merit. Me being a socialist, I'm like, well, if I can earn the same or maybe better overall profit, but make my service cheaper and make my customers stickier, that sort of attracts me. But, you got to work out, here's where we get our fees from now is service, fee for service, and we're not making anything out of this other theoretical model. You first got to see that revenue come up first if you're going to offset this. So, it'll be interesting to see if any players, have success in that space. We're certainly going to give it a go, and it's an area of interest for me for sure.
Yeah, I'm super curious how this model will play out once you start implementing it. Let's switch a bit to the operational angle of things. Which operational processes have created the biggest leverage as you were scaling with Vantage Strata?
Yeah, it's a really hard one to answer, to be honest, because I sometimes look back on my journey and wonder, I'm not a particularly my business partners and people who've worked with me, if they watch this, will laugh when they hear this. I'm not a particularly organized and systemic person in how I go about things, right? I've sometimes been accused of being a bit chaotic. So I look back and I'm sometimes surprised, sometimes a bit baffled about how we did it and how we scaled. I can't really point to any, real great advancements in systems or tech. We really were making it up as we went. What we did though was we really focused on like exceptional service, whatever that looked like. If I had my time again and I'm starting another strata business, and who knows what might happen. I'm here in Melbourne, and maybe I'll go and learn from all of my missteps the first time around and do something. But if I had my time again, I really would sit down and think much more deeply about the process and the system and design that before I started filling up with business. But if I'm being totally honest with you, Robert, the first time around, what we did was we really aggressively hired. We threw a lot of people at it. Every time we'd win business, I'd call it the pendulum. The pendulum would swing like this. I'd go, great, we've won a whole heap of business. That's fantastic. Great, all these customers have signed up. And I'd go, holy crap, how am I going to deal with all this work? And so I'd go out and I'd go and recruit and I'd hire people and then I'd have success. I go, yes, I got these awesome rock stars that have agreed to come and work for me. The pendulum would be like that. And then I'd go, oh crap, I've got to go pay for all these people. What am I going to do? And I'd go out and win work. And just over time, that pendulum that swung really wildly in the early days just started to swing a bit more evenly. And I was personally, it's probably not the answer you're looking for. You're looking for some insight on the process, but I was personally just very blessed in that I was able to recruit people who had the capabilities that I probably didn't inherently have myself to build all these systems around us as we went.
Totally. As you had this kind of pendulum early days experience with scaling the business, how did your technology stack look like back then? And how did it change over time as the company matured?
Yeah. So our technology stack was fairly basic at the time. You know, we started out on the Microsoft suite of products for the basic communications, email, document management, etc. And we used Property IQ, which is the Macquarie Bank owned software. You know, and it's reasonable strata management software, right? It does its job really perfectly fine. But if you wanted to do more than that, it's pretty average. Like sorry, Macquarie Bank, they've been great to me, but all of those systems are pretty average. They're not much better than the core thing that they do, which is predominantly the financial management. One of the things that we did early on, maybe this is to my credit, or it's certainly to my credit to me and my business partner, Rupert, who is now the CEO of Vantage. We've done a transition of leadership and he now runs the business, but he came from the world of, you know, institutional real estate management from Colliers. So he was really big on facilities management and management of the built environment and compliance. And we had that in our DNA early on. But that sort of matched with what I thought the industry needed as well. So these strata management systems are fine for issuing levies and they're really interested in the legislation of strata management, but they're totally disinterested in the fact that there are buildings involved, right? You would be forgiven in this industry for thinking that the central core main thing is that there is legislation and then there's money that, you know, comes into it. And then, you know, and then there's this building that needs to be taken care of. It's the reverse. Everything else is superfluous if you don't have this building. The building is there. The building requires maintenance and needs things to be done to it. That it causes the need to raise money. So the need to raise money then causes decisions about how the money's spent and, you know, accounting for that and all that. So everything sort of flows out from the building. That seems obvious. I'm sure people are listening to this going, duh. But like the way the industry is structured, it's kind of the industry, the building feels secondary. And if you look at the technology that services the industry, all the strata management software platforms, at least in Australia, I'm not sure what it's like overseas, but all of these core strata management platforms, there's very little in the way of describing the building. So a Property IQ or a Microsoft or whatever, you can't even say, yeah, this is a 200 unit building and it has 5 lifts and it's 9 stories and there's 2 basements and this is what it's. This, if we all have that information in our hands, but there's nowhere to input it in these systems. So early on, we agreed that we needed something in addition to the core strata management platform, and we wanted a building facilities management, preventative maintenance planning system, and we really were sort of leaders or pioneers, maybe in Australia, but certainly in our market in Canberra on the resident engagement and resident portal stuff. Now, you know, and that might have been a couple of years into our journey. We were like, no, we're gonna really invest heavily in that, and we're gonna invest not just in the owners and knowing Unit 1 and what its lot entitlements are and how much it pays in levies and what its voting rights are. We're going to invest in knowing Unit 1 is on the first floor of the West Tower, and we're going to invest in knowing who the property managers are, and we're going to invest in knowing who the tenants are, and we're going to give them an opportunity to have access to resident portals and we're going to communicate with them and we're going to say, hey, people in West Tower, we're letting you know the lift is down and we're looking into it. So we took that approach. That really gave us a huge head start. The distance we put between us and our competitors during, you know, it was probably a couple of years into the business when we really cottoned onto that and we invested in it. And we were probably 3 or 4 years or more. We were just so far ahead of the pack for a long time. And what happened is that no longer became unique. Everyone, you know, now At the time, if you said, "Oh, we got a resident portal and this is what we do," people would be, "Oh, that's amazing." Nowadays, if you said, "Oh, we got a resident portal," and everyone said, "Well, big deal. Every strata manager has that. That's not so revolutionary." It was at the time, and I think it was central to our service excellence, if you like.
Hmm. What channel do the homeowners contact you through the most? Is it the resident portal? Is it email? Is it phone calls? What's your daily, what does your daily operation look like?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's still email. And even with all that investment in resident portal stuff was not. So the resident portal stuff has sort of two components. It's active and it's passive, right? So if I've got the details of the tenants and I put them in the resident portal, they might not ever even look at it. They've never logged on. I'm fond of saying we need to be realistic in Strata. Well, tenants and even owners aren't waking up and go, "Oh, it's the morning. I'm going to jump online to the resident portal and see what's going on." That's just not how. It's not Facebook. No one cares enough. But if you're in there and I send a communication out to the building and I say, I want to communicate to all residents, exclude investors who aren't on site, but all residents in the West Tower, I'm going to say there's going to be an interruption to the water supply. You'll get that alert. You'll get an email. You might not even appreciate that it has been because of the resident portal that you're in, but that's how we've been able to use that communication channel. So you might receive that information and still, when you've got a problem, you'll still jump on an email and send an email to your strata manager. So at the
Got
moment,
it.
I'd still say that it's email is the primary channel of communication, but we're reinvesting now and doubling down. And my business partner Rupert has really been since he took over, he's injected new energy into the importance of the resident portal, and we're really pushing people to communicate through the portal. Again, a bold statement, something I've said in the past, never done it. I had this theory. I delivered it to my whole team in a big planning session we had about 5 or 6 years ago in Sydney, and I was laughed out of the room. We never did it, but it was called pull the goalie. The strategy was pull the goalie. It's an ice hockey term about, if you're down in the game and you've got, down more than 3 points in the last, 10 minutes of the game, your best strategy is to pull your goalie out and put all of, push your whole attack line forward, right? But
Yeah.
the idea there that I was trying to get at was, let's get rid of email. Let's tell people there is no email anymore. Pull the goalie. You've got a problem, you got to go through the portal. Oh, I don't want to go through the portal. I
Yeah.
want to send an email. If you're capable of
Yeah.
sending an email, you're capable of going on the portal. Betsy Jones, who's 100 years old, who doesn't know how to operate a computer, we'll still let her make a phone call. But if you took away the email, maybe you would force people down a route. But we've just never been brave enough to do it. I'd be super curious to hear from any other
Hmm.
strata management business owners who have taken that bold move. But I think that's going to one day be utopia. Every
Yeah.
request comes through in a qualified manner. We know who they are, what building they are, what kind of user they are, what their issue category is. It can find the right person straight away. It's not going to languish in someone's email inbox for 3 days because they were away, and forgot to have their out of office. I'm like, that's to me utopia. There is really controlling the
Yeah.
inflow of requests, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting question because this changes the way that they communicate with you fundamentally, right? And people are in general very averse to change. So it's somehow understandable that they don't want to use the portal because there's just so many portals for everything, right? You have a portal for your bank account, a portal for, I don't know, for everything, right? And you have the Strata portal and so on. But I was wondering, that means you must get many emails at the moment, right? So my question is, how are you currently handling it? And what solutions have you tried to implement at the moment besides the portal? Or
Yeah.
how are you dealing with the whole email stream that you're getting at the moment?
Yeah. I'm trying to see if I can find something here. We just had a meeting with our team the other day. I wasn't at it, so I can't take too much credit. But we're measuring that outcome really closely, the email traffic. And it actually goes back to that whole reinvestment in the portal approach that is admittedly being led by my business partner. And so it's not just, well, we're trying to encourage it. We're encouraging it in such a proactive way and really reminding our customers of it at every opportunity. It's in email signatures. It's just about every touch point. Use the portal, use the portal, use the portal, explaining why. Really importantly, enlisting the help and deputising the committees. I don't know what they call in other markets. We call them our executive committee or committee of management or board in Canada and the US, I think. Enlisting their help to get them to tell the communities we really want people to use the portal. And I couldn't find the numbers on it, but it's really significant. I think our emails, I think it was about, we get 1.2 emails a year, 1.2 million emails a year. I think that's come down more than 200 or 300,000 measured in the last 12 months to the 12 months before. I might even be doing that a disservice because I think the number might even be more than that. So it's a fairly agricultural way of going about it. I'd like to say we had some other magic sauce, but promoting it, pushing it, and as I said, enlisting the committees who are often more influential in these, well, almost always more influential in their communities than we are. And the answer, the benefit is simple. Use the portal. It might be not the traditional way you want to communicate, but if you use the portal, it's going to find the right person straight away. So if you really want fast turnaround times, if that's important to you, if it's important to have your matter dealt with, then use the service provider's preferred communication channel, and you're probably going to get a better outcome in a faster time frame.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I think the problem is a bit of like latency or infrequency. People, because the average person doesn't have much need to communicate with their strata manager. If they're doing it every week, I mean, I look at my bank all the time, so looking at it go down in balance every single day because I'm a masochist logging on every single day to look how much money I'm spending. If you do it every day, then you become really familiar with it. It's second nature. If I needed to contact, my building manager or strata manager once a year, it's not second nature. I forget my password. I've got app fatigue. I don't even know how to do it anymore. So that's a barrier that we've got to really find a solution to. I think where technology is going, and certainly I think where our mind is moving towards, is actually, for all the effort, initially in having the resident portal and how well that served us, and for all the effort now in doubling down on that, I actually think the evolution of that is going to be, it's not even necessary. I think email can come in, and the technology now really should be able to recognize this person, understand their issue, work out what they want, interrogate that against a, clean CR, look at the history of their issues and spit it and tell us what we need to know straight away. Whereas in the past, that had to come through a particular pipe. Now I think it sort of doesn't matter, because the technology is capable of sort of sorting that out for us. So I think that's the next horizon, to be fair.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting point that you're touching upon that I was curious to hear from you. Given this hype with AI that we have right now, have you looked into any of the solutions that are out there, and have you experimented with them? And in your opinion, which technologies are actually working and are working today for you, and which do you think are fluff and don't add any value?
Yeah, we are experimenting with things. There's the problem is a lot of stuff we look at is impressive, but some things take, materially different approaches to the solution. What I think we've got at the moment, or I've suffered from, I'm happy to admit it, and I suspect a lot of others are too, is a bit of paralysis by analysis, like it's just hard to know which direction to take, and so you don't commit to anything. The experimenting we've done is less on AI per se, and a lot more on automation, which is not necessarily AI. And we were doing that. We've been doing that, for 3 or 4 years. I got approval from my shareholders and partners to invest, I think it was $60,000 in some automation stuff that I was going to do. And I ended up, I got in big trouble because I think I spent 200 and something thousand dollars in the end, and it was much more expensive. But it was well before anyone was talking about AI. It was before even the release of Chat GPT, the first one. So And I
Yeah.
think what we do now is we conflate the two. But now I think automation coupled with AI really unlocks a lot of potential and opportunity. So I can't really answer really clearly. I think that still, if you're talking about taking a lot of processy stuff off the hands of strata managers and getting things moving faster, I still think that's probably, there's plenty to do in automation and process documentation. Whereas AI is probably going to be, large language models, like summarize, I don't know, summarize everything in relation to the gardening, that happened at this building in the last 12 months. And it's going to read emails and make sure it knows which emails relate to which building and spin up and say, well, the committee owners were upset about the mulch was looking crap. The committee went and got quotes. They agreed to do $30,000 worth of mulching, but just as they went to do it, they found out the irrigation was buggered and it's going to cost $200,000 to replace. And that's why the mulching hasn't happened. Doing that sort of stuff, that'd be really valuable because it would be a way for us to be able to report to owners. It's a way for someone else to step into the shoes of a manager and really quickly know the answers about things that are happening in their portfolio. It's a key complaint of customers that a strata manager's away or leaves, new person comes in and they don't know anything. They feel like it's their job to have to retrain this person, which I can appreciate. That would be really annoying as a customer. So
Yeah.
that's my hunch about where the AI LLMs kind of fit immediately. And maybe those two things, automation of processes and machine understanding what you're trying to achieve. So when we were doing automation, it was you were having to tell it exactly what to do. It had no idea what it was doing or why it was doing it. So something in that chain stops or changes. The machine doesn't know what its goal is and therefore solve it. It just goes, duh, I've hit a brick wall. So I still think that's still 80% automation, but add the AI in understanding its objective. That takes out that menial stuff. Whereas AI is high value, understanding context, understanding the history. You can read an email and know about something and learn about something and never forget it. It is bulletproof against leave and people moving on to other organizations and can be recalled at an instant. I think that's how those two things probably fit together.
So basically avoiding that knowledge leaves the business, so to speak, that knowledge gets out of the head of the managers and stays with the business by feeding everything into the AI. That's what you mean.
I think so, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that knowledge
yeah,
becomes institutional, not
yeah,
personal.
yeah,
And it's a hedge against people leaving. But
yes.
the problem isn't just when people leave either. It's like, I know this myself. Some new owner will come in and say, "Oh, I know, such and such and have a complaint." And it's exhausting to
Hmm.
tell them something, or even the committee having to remind them, we spoke about this last year, all the effort in. So even if no one ever left, it's still a value in being able to
It's an
go,
information base.
here it is, here's the
Yeah,
information.
yeah.
You can ask me
Super
again
interesting.
next week and it won't be a big burden because I'm not going to have to sit there and remind everyone and retell everyone.
I think you're spot on here, and I think you're a bit ahead of the curve here, especially from how you see the combination between the automation and the AI, where you combine this, let's say, low-level work with the high-level understanding. And last question that we ask all of our guests: if you could go back to your 20-year-old self and give yourself a piece of advice back then when you started out in the industry, what would that be?
Buy Tesla shares, probably. It would be invest heavy in Tesla, get out of SpaceX after the IPO early. That's a good question. Gosh, I don't know. I don't have a satisfying answer, and I'm going to give you a cheats answer.
Okay.
And without going back over, all that stuff about behind the door services, that's an area that we are really heavily investing in, and we're years into an experiment. I feel like we've now cracked the code. I'm really excited about it. But I speak to that's a side business, a separate business. I've got different partners in that. I speak to my partners in that a lot, and I go, where we've arrived today, there was no shortcut to get here. There actually was no journey that we could have taken other than that painstaking journey of you do something, you learn, you understand a problem in a different way, you iterate, you apply it. So I don't know. My advice to my past self is just I'm sorry to tell you there's no shortcut. I'll see you at the end. You've got to go through the journey and you've got to get all the scrapes and bruises to gain the knowledge and gain the wisdom. Otherwise, you'll arrive where you arrive without knowing what you know.
Yeah, totally agreed. I used to tell myself that the only way to actually learn is through pain. That's the only way I think people can learn. It's like you cannot, if you tell somebody don't do this because it's a mistake, they will still do it. But only then will they learn, when they have gone through the pain.
That's
Amazing
right.
advice.
Yeah, good. I'm glad.
Amazing
I thought it
advice.
was a cheat's answer.
Chris, where can people find you online?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn easily enough. I still own 50% of the business of Vantage Strata. I'm a director. I'm heavily involved, and we have a public profile, vantagestrata.com.au. But yeah, if people want to reach me directly, my LinkedIn's probably the easiest. I answer most messages except for the ones that say, "Hey, we're putting together offshore teams. Can we help you? We help you with your offshore requirements?" So about 50 of them a day. So that they go in the delete bin.
Got it. Chris, it was a very insightful conversation, and thanks for being on the show. Looking forward to chatting soon, and wishing you good luck with your new business model. Hope it goes through. And
Right.
that's all from my side. Thanks for
Thanks, Robert.
joining.
Thanks for
Bye
having me,
bye.
mate. It was a pleasure.